Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Talks with Chuk. Each week, we cover pressing topics that matter to you and your business. I'm Arianna Gonzalez from Chuk, attorneys and CPAs tuning in from our San Diego office, and please join me in welcoming attorney Jioselin Juarez Contreras, an executive immigration team lead and manager from our Los Angeles office, Carmen Lopez. Hi there, Jioselin, and hi, Carmen, and welcome. For today's topic, we will be talking about F1's filing for OPT. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not create an attorney-client relationship, so if you have questions, please email us at info@chuk.com, and we'd love to help you out. So let's get right into it. Jioselin, can you tell me what is F1 OPT and what are the eligibility requirements for F1 students to apply for 12-month OPT?
Yeah, Ariana, I'm happy to. So OPT, just to make sure I kind of pronounce it, throughout our conversation, we're going to use an acronym, which is optional practical training, basically. And what it is, it's a temporary employment that is directly related to the student's, field of study. And for OPT, there's two parts. There's the pre-completion OPT and the post-completion OPT. For the pre-completion OPT, basically, the student is able to apply if they qualify based on the field of study for work. They do have to have been academically in the school for a full academic year before they're able to apply for pre-completion OPT. Now, for post-completion OPT, the student is able to apply up to 90 days before the end of their degree term for OPT. They go to their DSO, which is the designated school officer, and then that they apply for the OPT. And then after that, they complete all of the requirements that are needed for the OPT to be approved.
Wow, great info. Thank you for sharing those requirements with us. Carmen, so can you share with us what documentation is required when filing for the 12-month OPT?
Sure. Happy to do that. Basically, the form that is needed, you have to submit a form. The form is I-765, Application for Employment Authorization. That form is filed with USCIS at a specific address, together with a few other documents. Those documents are filing fee of $520. On April 1st, filing fees did go up, so the new filing fee is now $520. You have to submit the I-20 that's fully endorsed and signed by the school official and the student, and you submit that. You submit 2 passport photos, and finally submit the passport, and we submit the I-94 that was issued when you last entered the United States. So not very many documents, are submitted.
Great to know. So what about during the 12-month OPT period? How long can an F1 visa holder be unemployed? Do we have any information about that?
Yes. Basically the law, the regulations is that a student who holds 12-month OPT, this is the OPT that's issued after you complete your program, they give you up to 90 days without having any employment. So 90 days is the maximum. You must be employed the remaining of the time. If not, it would be a violation.
Wow, okay, that's really important to know. So, Jioselin, do we know how many times one can receive the 12-month OPT during their academic career? Is there a number limit to this?
So the good thing is, for students, if, they're doing, they have a projection of like a career that takes, several degrees to obtain, they are able to get OPT at every level. So if they're doing an associate's first and the associate has the ability to get OPT, they can. Bachelor's, master's, PhD. So yeah, so there's, as long as the degree that they're doing for that level qualifies for OPT, they're able to do it.
Wow, really good to know. Thanks for sharing that with us. So, Carmen, can F1 students reclaim unused time from a previous OPT if they re-enroll in higher education? Is that valid?
So, Ariana, basically, it's not common for everybody. It's not like everyone can do it, but there are some exceptions, and I'll give the exceptions. So, for example, if you're enrolled in a non-STEM academic program, let's say a master's degree. Let's say the master's is a business degree. It's a non-STEM master's. And let's say that you obtain a bachelor's degree in the United States that was a STEM bachelor's, but you didn't use it, okay, for the bachelor's, you can actually use it right after the 12-month OPT that you gained on the master's program that is non-STEM. Again, I want to stress that it's non-STEM. So as long as it's that you obtained the bachelor's degree within the last 10 years, you could use that STEM OPT that you could have used on the bachelor's, but you didn't use it, and reclaim it on the non-STEM master's.
Wow, that was all really great information. Thanks for sharing that with us. Jioselin, do you know what the reporting responsibilities of students on OPT are to their educational institutions, if any?
Yeah, so it's really important. It's a really important topic. So basically, when you're on F1, and then if you're on OPT, you have a designated school official, right? And so any changes that involves name, address, employment, loss of employment, they need to be basically updated with the DSO so that they update it on the SEPA system, which is the system that they use to incorporate all the information. And it has to be within 10 days. So it's very important specifically because any kind of, change might have a effect on their status. So yeah, within 10 days, basically.
Good to know. So, change of name, address, employer. So what happens if somebody does change their employer? How does changing employers affect OPT status, and what are the notification requirements for that?
Yeah, so very kind of similar to the previous question, right? You're going to go to the DSO if you have any kind of change of your OPT employer. And it's very important because the form that the DSO provides, it's an I-20. That's basically the form that designates who are your OPT employers. And on that form, they also put, the name of the employer, the dates of the employment that you were with that employer. And it's very important because in the future, if you're going to change any kind of status, you want to make sure you have that record in that document so that the official that would be adjudicating your new application for any immigration relief has all the information that there was never any issue of we're not in compliance on your F1 OPT, basically.
Great info. Thanks for sharing that with us. So what are the risks and consequences of failing to maintain lawful F1 status during OPT, Carmen? Do we have information about that?
Yes, basically, if you don't maintain your status, there are various requirements that have to be met when you're a student and, dealing with F1 and OPT. Most importantly on OPT, it's, not working more than the 90 days you're given, for example. On the 12-month, for example, same thing with the STEM, there's a limited amount of time that's given for that. And there are also requirements of, you doing work that is not related to the program. So if at some point of time the USCIS finds out that you violated any of that, then it could prevent you from successfully, for example, changing status to an H-1B during the lottery when you're selected, for example. If USCIS comes back, sometimes they come back with requests for evidence where they want a lot of detailed information when you were studying and when you were working on OPT, and they ask for letters from employers, pay stubs, things like that, that can demonstrate that maybe you worked 91 days without employment instead of the 90 days you're excused, and that can cause a consequence to your H-1B. Now, that's called lack of maintenance of status. So if that happens, then the H-1B will be approvable if there are no other areas of inadmissibility, but it will be approved consular if you fail to maintain F1 status.
Understood. So who is eligible for STEM OPT extensions? Is this something that some people can qualify for and get an extension?
Basically, the people that are eligible for the STEM OPT are those that are enrolled in a STEM program, and STEM stands for science, mathematics, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Typically, it's a list of codes, CIP codes that are on the list, a predefined list, and if you're on that list, you're able to get a I-20 for a STEM program, and that does allow you to get the additional 24 months on top of the 12 months post OPT.
Okay, so the OPT extension can be 24 months, and then if it's combined, it can be a 12-month period. Okay, good to know. So what are the work hour requirements for F1 students on STEM OPT?
Yeah, so for F1 students on STEM OPT, basically they just have to do at least a minimum of 20 hours a week. And and then they could do up, of course, to 40 hours, which is full time. But the good thing that it's good to know is that if the individual has, a part-time job, they can have multiple employment abilities, basically. So they could be on multiple employers on part-time, and that could be totally allowable.
What about during the STEM OPT period? How long can participants go without employment?
Yes. So this is how it is. So for the 12 months, it's 90 days. So if you haven't used the 90 days on the 12 months, then you get a whole 150 on the STEM OPT. Okay, so same thing example, if you didn't use 60 on the 12 month, then you have 120 left on the STEM. So it works that way. So it's 90 for the 12, 150 in total if you didn't use the 90 for the STEM, right? But typically it's 90 and then additional 60. So if a person exhausted their whole 90, they only have 60, left on the STEM.
Got it. That's interesting. And is it possible to obtain a 24-month STEM OPT extension more than once?
So basically, you are only allowed to use it once in each academic year. So as Jioselin had explained earlier, the OPT STEM is allowed in each academic year, each program, excuse me. So associates is one level, bachelor's is a different, master's, PhD. So if you've already used it on the bachelor's, you are able to get it on the master's if it's a STEM program. Again, it has to be a STEM program to get that additional 24 months.
And what happens if an individual's OPT expires before their H-1B cap is selected in the lottery? Are there any consequences to this?
So it's not more of consequence, but it's kind of the case by case situation. So what I mean by this is depends on when their OPT expires. If their OPT expires, the first day that the H-1B cap can be filed is April 1st. So if their F1 OPT expires in February, there's going to be a gap between February and April, so they have to maintain their status if they're going to be able to file, if they get selected and then file an H-1B for change of status, they need to maintain their status. Now, if they get, if their OPT expires post April 1st, then they could do a cap extension, and that's a little bit different. So it's really a case by case, but really reality is anything that you want to file, you have to maintain your status if you're going to do a change of status. And then if you can't, then you could still file the H-1B cap if you're selected, but you would have to do a consular process.
I want to touch on that a little bit more. You mentioned cap gap. So what is the cap gap extension for F1 students, and how does this work?
So cap gap is basically a ability to get additional time. So the best way to say is that if you have a OPT card, that is expiring, in your file, you were selecting the lottery. The filing date of the lottery is April 1st to June 30th. So if for example, your OPT is going to expire before June 30th, and you are able to work under the cap gap, and cap gap gives you the ability to work through September 30th. If you're able to file a successful change of status before June 30th, because your situation is that it's expiring before the filing deadline of the H-1B. So if you're able to file it, you're able to work, even if you're on the face of the work authorization, which is the OPT, it is expiring, let's say June 15th, you're able to work through September 30th because you filed a successful change of status before June 30th, which was the deadline. So that is what a cap gap is. It gives you the ability to work through the end of that September 30th. And then H-1B simply will kick in on October 1st if it's approved by October 1st. If the H-1 is not approved by October 1st, then you will not be able to work only till September 30th. You are able to remain in the United States lawfully, but you can't work if your H-1 is still not approved by October 1st of that year.
Wow, really good to know. Thanks for diving into those details for us. And how can an F1 visa holder transition from OPT to an H-1B visa?
So basically the way it is that you have an employer who's going to file your case, and you file your change of status before the deadline, so you get selected. You have between April 1st and June 30th to file. So if you're on an OPT, it depends on when it expires. People expire different times. Some people might expire before June 30th. Those are the ones that work through the cap gap through September 30th. And you have people that are expiring after October 1st. So you just file a change of status. You check the box, change of status versus consular processing. So therefore, as soon as the H-1B is approved, they're able to work. If you've already crossed October 1st, if your case is approved, let's say H1 is approved before October 1st, you still have to maintain your status, like Jioselin said earlier, through a valid OPT. OPT has a grace period of 60 days, so you're able to utilize that. But as long as it gets filed, you're able to stay in the country.
Wow, such great info. Thank you so much, Carmen and Jioselin, for sharing all of your insights on that. We are almost out of time, but I want to ask you one more question. Jioselin, what advice do immigration experts have for F1 students nearing the end of their OPT regarding travel outside of the US?
Yeah, travel outside the US when you're very near the end of your OPT is, a very, sensitive situation. By what I mean by this is because, once you re-enter, you have to prove certain documents to re-enter. And so if you are very close in the end of your term and, you don't know what future status you're gonna get, there is a little bit of a risk. So usually what we would consult is, for the individual to speak with a qualified immigration expert so that, we discuss whether, it is an option, because there's certain things to consider. If you don't have a valid visa, first of all, you can't really travel until you have a valid visa for that category. So reality, it would just be a case-by-case situation regarding travel. And then if you were discussing, F1 and potentially if they already filed their H-1B, it would be also a case decision whether, if they did a change of status from F1 OPT to H-1B, they can be allowed to travel, but their change of status will not get approved because they abandoned their change of status because they traveled. So it is really a case by case. So can't really generalize that answer.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And if you are watching this and have questions about your specific case or process, please reach out to us. We're happy to connect you with Jioselin and Carmen. They'd love to help you out. And thank you again, Jioselin and Carmen, for your time and your insights. That is all we have time for today. So this brings us to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. A special thank you to Jioselin and Carmen. To stay up to date, please subscribe and follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If this video was helpful, please make sure to give it a like and share it. If you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to send us an email at info@chuuk.com anytime. We'd love to help you out. Make sure you let us know what topic you want to see next. And join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, stay safe and take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us.